Welcome to my very first episode of the history of Twisted Metal, a series I've been wanting to get to for a very long time. We're going to break down the games in the series in great detail along with its individual characters, much like my Mortal Kombat series. In this first episode, I'll be focusing on the history of Mr. Grimm, the Grim Reaper-like figure of the series, the Taker of Souls. Since his first appearance was the original Twisted Metal, I'll also be covering that game as well. But what is Twisted Metal? How did the series start? How are all the games connected? Well, they're kind of not. The games were mostly developed as standalone titles, with no strong linear story connections between all 8 of the main games, besides some of them having some basic running storylines, and some of the games have totally different versions of the same characters. But there is one common thread wrapped around the entire Twisted Metal series. It's a tournament held across various, sometimes apocalyptic landscapes, with contestants riding vehicles mounted with all sorts of deadly weaponry. The goal? Destroy each other and everything until only one remains. And the sponsor of the tournament, Calypso, grants that winner one wish, anything they desire. Calypso, sometimes a wanted criminal, other times a schoolyard bully, but usually implied to have some sort of demonic power, or perhaps the devil himself.
And we shall tear down your tower of sin! Oh, I know who you are. I know who you really
In the real world, Twisted Metal was a product of the mid-1990s, an era where an intense console war was brewing for years between the juggernauts of Nintendo and Sega. Sony was preparing to enter the fray with their PlayStation console. The console was planned to have a US release date of September 9th, 1995. And they needed games to attract people to this new, unproven game machine. In comes game designer David Jaffe, who began his relationship with the video game industry as a simple game tester in order to pay the bills while he was exploring a career in the film industry. Instead of working his way into the film industry, however, he found himself amazed by a video presentation of what the upcoming PlayStation was capable of. This was an era when video games were finally becoming a serious medium for great storytelling. The technology had caught up. David Jaffe worked his way into a position with Sony and given the responsibility to design a game for the PlayStation, alongside his design partner Mike Jam. But getting work done became difficult. The pair had a hard time getting along with other developers due to their strong vision of what their idea of a video game should be. They were given one final chance to come up with a viable idea for a game when they were sent to meet with Evans & Sutherland, a Salt Lake City, Utah-based company that was well-versed in 3D technology when many others in the industry were still learning how to use it. They were focused on making commercial and military simulations, but Sony contracted them to create a 3D game using their technology. The technology was there, they just needed a team and a basis for the game. The idea for Twisted Metal was born after the meeting, thanks to the frustration of Los Angeles traffic. David and Mike were stuck on a heavily congested interstate after arriving from their flight, and they began jokingly fantasizing about destroying the cars in their way with explosive weaponry, inspired by their exposure to film creators like Michael Bay and films such as Mad Max. Explosions, cars, guns. That was it. They pitched the idea to Sony, it was quickly approved, and brought to Evans and Sutherland programmers. Instead of a violent car combat experience, however, they repurposed the idea into a pizza delivery simulation. You heard that right. Twisted Metal was almost a game about pizza delivery. Thanks to Sony's interference, the Twisted Metal ideas survived intact. In 1994, employees from Evans & Sutherland were hired by Sony Interactive Studios to form Single Track Entertainment Technologies. They were given $2 million and a deadline of 12 months to create 2 PlayStation games. The 2 projects began with a common code base and split into 2 codenamed projects: Red Mercury, which eventually became the PlayStation classic Warhawk, and Firestorm, which eventually became Twisted Metal. On David Jaffe's side, he was completely focused on Twisted Metal, and it took some time to come up with the name. It originally started out as Battle Cars, Urban Assault, Cars and Rockets, High Octane, until the name Twisted Metal clicked. There were high hopes for the game, yet development and testing were almost a disaster. Since it was the first game, all these ideas had to be figured out from scratch. After creating several of the arenas, they were considered too large, too empty, caused too many technical issues. Levels had to be divided up and shrunken down. Live action footage was filmed for the character endings, but they never made it into the final release of the game because of concerns that some might be considered offensive. Instead replaced by a still image with scrolling text. Of course, for the purpose of this video series, I will be using the lost footage. David Jaffe also described Twisted Metal as Mortal Kombat with cars, so of course testers were hired that were experienced with fighting games to play a car combat game. Their opinions of the game were overwhelmingly negative. The first time the public saw Twisted Metal was alongside Warhawk at the first E3 convention in May 1995. Both games were some of the first Western PlayStation games available outside of Japan and were heavily used to advertise PlayStation's Western launch. Twisted Metal quite literally had to succeed. November 5th, 1995. Twisted Metal releases to the American public, and all fears of failure vanished. Critics mostly gave it positive reviews, praising chaotic action and variety of characters and vehicles, while some criticized its graphics and short single-player length. But the most important figures to Sony were those sales numbers. By 1996, Twisted Metal and Warhawk had a combined total of 500,000 units sold and $28 million in revenue. Excellent figures for the time. While Warhawk didn't have as much of an impact in the game industry in comparison, Twisted Metal almost single-handedly popularized the car combat genre, and became a staple of the early PlayStation library, eventually making it into its greatest hits label. And now that you know the history of the game that started it all, let's dive into the character of Mr. Grimm and his role in the Twisted Metal tournaments. Starting with the original Twisted Metal, it's the future. The future of the year 2005. Calypso is holding the 10th annual Twisted Metal tournament in the streets of Los Angeles, and there can only be one winner. Mr. Grimm is a mysterious contestant whose true identity is unknown, only describing himself as a collector of sorts, and his ultimate wish is to collect the one item that's eluded him for years. He appears as a biker wearing a helmet, his face completely unseen. His vehicle? A fast, highly maneuverable chopper that specializes on launching a mystical weapon from the other side. This death spawn weapon has been known to scare the life out of his enemies when launched. If Mr. Grimm reaches the final battle of the tournament, he's forced to face the winner of the previous tournament, a demon from hell operating an armored battle tank, Minion. Upon victory, Mr. Grimm meets with the severely disfigured Calypso and reveals his true identity as the Grim Reaper, seeking a very specific soul.
Congratulations! You have won my contest. Welcome to my home.
Greetings, Calypso.
As you well know, any prize you request will be yours.
I am the winner, and you are my prize. I want your soul.
No! No! It's not time! No! We made a deal!
There will be no deal this time.
No! It is not time! No! No!
Twisted Metal 2 is a direct follow-up to the original Twisted Metal story. A year later, Los Angeles is completely destroyed, and Calypso's already selected his next batch of drivers, but he's got nowhere to hold the tournament now. His solution? 2006's Twisted Metal will be held worldwide in places such as Hong Kong, Paris, Holland, even Antarctica. Nowhere on Earth was safe from its destruction. Once again, Mr. Grimm enters, fully revealing his role as the Grim Reaper. He lives off the energy of souls he takes, and his hunger is growing out of control. He wants more. His vehicle is another motorcycle, complete with a sidecar with a mounted turret, and he's armed with his special weapon, the Screaming Soul. If Mr. Grimm makes it to the end of the second tournament, he faces off against the final obstacle before Calypso, the father of Sweet Tooth the Clown, Darktooth. He rises from the sewers and wants revenge for the death of his son during the contest, and Mr. Grimm has to destroy his enormous ice cream truck. Once Darktooth is destroyed, Mr. Grimm gets his wish. He no longer just wants Calypso's soul, he wants all the souls.
Here for my prize, Calypso. I need souls, if you must know. I'm a bit of a junkie, addicted to death. Every moment I am without a soul, I get weaker. My job is too hard. People, they have a tendency of not dying fast enough. Please, Calypso, accelerate the process! Whatever it takes to make them die faster!
I did just that. Fulfilling my end of the bargain, I, the mighty Calypso, caused the world to become a battleground. All walks of men engaged in fierce combat. Few could call themselves safe as the death toll rose and the population fell dramatically, threatening to wipe out mankind in one horrific war. Within weeks, the earth was reduced to chaos as the streets began to rise with the bodies of the dead. The souls came pouring in. Mr. Grimm was happy. The world was never the same after Grimm's horrific feast, but no meal can last forever. The human race was obliterated, and within time, Mr. Grimm was hungry again.
Feed, please feed me! I need souls!
He received all the souls on Earth, but now there was nothing left to feed on. And although Twisted Metal 3 was the next game released, the originally PSP exclusive Twisted Metal Head-On is usually seen as the direct follow-up to Twisted Metal 1 and 2, due to some story threads following through with some characters. Mr. Grimm returns to the contest in a similar fashion with his motorcycle and Screaming Soul, Flaming Skull weapon. This time Mr. Grimm reveals that he was once human. He died at the age of 26 and was given the duty of being the Grim Reaper. For centuries he'd been doing his job properly, delivering souls to their next destination, until he became curious and devoured one. After that he was hooked, and his hunger for souls continued growing. Now he found himself devouring more souls than he was actually delivering. The cravings were driving him into insanity, and he realized that he couldn't take the torture anymore. His wish was to be rid of this curse, and no longer be the Grim Reaper. If he makes it to the end of the tournament, he faces off against Darktooth again, this time driven by the mysterious, interconnected pair of Marcus and Needles Kane. With the defeat of Darktooth in its transformed Towertooth state, Mr. Grimm gains his wish of transferring his powers to someone else, at a grave cost.
Congratulations, Mr. Grimm. You're the winner.
Need my fix.
Feel better, Mr. Grimm?
No, Calypso, I can't take this anymore. It started out so simple, so pure. I'd collect one here, devour one there. I could start and stop whenever I wanted. Now the hunger owns me. It's beyond my control. Please help me.
There are many ways I can aid you, but I need to know exactly what you wish of me. Claim your prize, Mr. Grimm.
I don't want to be the Reaper of Souls anymore. For my prize, I want you to turn someone else into the Dark Collector so I may live a human life.
You're mortal now, Mr. Grimm. The torch has been passed.
I'm free. Thank you, Calypso. I'm free. I'm free. Yes. I'm free. The hunger is.
Twisted Metal 3. This is the first time the series was in the hands of another developer, and it's mostly considered a standalone entry with little to no connective tissue. to stories in Twisted Metal 1 and 2. Twisted Metal 3 Mr. Grimm looks a bit different, and he recycles the same motorcycle and sidecar aspect he's used before, along with the Screaming Soul special attack. Just like in 2, his hunger for more souls is growing out of control. But instead of wanting to devour all the souls on Earth, or being tired of being the Grim Reaper, Mr. Grimm dreams of devouring the darkest, most powerful soul imaginable. One that would quench his thirst forever and would make him all-powerful. If Mr. Grimm reaches the end of Twisted Metal 3, he faces off against Calypso's mightiest demon henchman, Primeval. With the destruction of the demonic Primeval, Mr. Grimm seeks to collect the darkest soul in existence, the soul of Calypso himself, in one of the stupidest endings in the entire series.
Mr. Grimm, you've snatched every soul on the planet but mine. Now you want my soul? Your wish is granted. I am Calypso, and I thank you for playing Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal 4 is another standalone game that creates a new origin for the Twisted Metal tournament that results in Sweet Tooth the Clown taking control of the contest from Calypso. Now Sweet Tooth runs the yearly Twisted Metal contest alongside his army of midget clowns. The Twisted Metal 4 version of Mr. Grimm is completely different. Instead of a Grim Reaper hungry for souls, he's a skeletal pirate.
Revenge! 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 The clown's soul will dangle from the captain's hook.
Captain Grimm. He enters the tournament in his pirate ship car, armed with a powerful dread cannon that shoots a fiery cannonball. He has some kind of undisclosed rivalry with Sweet Tooth and dreams of having his revenge, although he keeps the secret of that mystery to himself. The final contestant waiting at the end is Sweet Tooth, Needles Kane, driving the Sweet Tooth ice cream truck. After defeating him, Captain Grimm challenges him to a sword fight. The winner of the fight receives the soul of the first one to fall. Will it be Captain Grimm, will it be Sweet Tooth, or will it be someone else?
Captain Grimm, you have, without a shadow of a doubt, proven yourself the strongest, most cunning, and hitherto, the champion of our Twisted Metal battles. Through Sweet Tooth kindness and good heart, you are hereby offered one wish for your achievement. Give us your wish, Captain.
Here's my one wish. The captain wishes to meet Sweet Tooth in a sword fight to the death, and the prize to the victor, the soul of the first one dead. The soul of the first one dead!
Your wish has been granted, driver! The soul of the first one dead!
Twisted Metal Small Brawl takes us to a new contest, run by a young schoolyard bully named Calypso, that forces other children to participate in his contest of destruction. But instead of vehicles, explosions, and real-life carnage, this contest pits the children's RC vehicles against each other, around their school campus, playground, neighborhood, causing a headache for everybody around. And Calypso promises to grant the winner whatever their heart desires. This Mr. Grimm controls a small motorcycle with a small Grim Reaper action figure attached to it that can shoot 2 small pumpkins. He's also a child completely obsessed with Halloween. He heard rumors of another dimension known as HalloweenLand, a mystical land where it's Halloween every day. His only desire is to go there. The final obstacle in his way is Piecemeal, a collector and scavenger that built a powerful RC car from the remains of other cars that he defeated in previous tournaments of Calypso. If Mr. Grimm destroys Piecemeal's car, the portal to HalloweenLand opens.
Here you go, Grimm. The portal to HalloweenLand. Yeah. But you might not want to go in.
Are you insane? Nice try.
Because you can never come back out.
In here, you lose track of time. Hours melt into days. Days turn into years. 30 years in my case.
And now Twisted Metal Black, which some do consider an entire reboot of the series, while the game itself actually holds clues that it could all be taking place inside Sweet Tooth's head. None of it might be real. In Twisted Metal Black, Calypso is a wanted criminal with the power to grant wishes, and he collects his contestants from Blackfield Asylum, where some of the most mentally unstable people are locked away forever. In this version, Mr. Grimm is a veteran of the Vietnam War that's suffering from cannibalistic cravings. He holds someone responsible for his broken mind and wants revenge for making him snap. Calypso offers him revenge, and Mr. Grimm agrees to enter the contest, with his classic motorcycle and sidecar equipped with an exploding sickle.
Winner take all. In my case, first prize meant getting even with the man who stole my sanity. How could I refuse? I agreed to play.
As he continues the fight against the other inmates of Blackfield Asylum, Mr. Grimm could feel his killer instinct returning from the war. It had been decades and he forgot how good he was at killing. It was beginning to feel good. With every dead body he saw fried and mangled from his attacks, his cannibalistic feelings were returning, and he feared that he was going totally insane. After a battle with last year's winner, Minion, Mr. Grimm gets knocked out and remembers the reason that he's fighting.
I hadn't thought about the war in years. All the drugs and therapy in the world could never get me to talk about what I went through. But when I passed out, I couldn't escape it. The past came rushing back.
During a desperate firefight where they were outnumbered, his friend Benny was shot, bleeding heavily, while Mr. Grimm shouted and tried to help him. But the two men were taken, captured by the Viet Cong. As prisoners of war, they were abused, and Benny was denied any medical attention. Instead of a cell, they were thrown into a hole 25 feet below the ground. Mr. Grimm screamed for help, and one day, a man showed up. An advisor that recommended torture methods. The most effective one? Starvation.
I tried to block out what was happening. I knew what he wanted me to do, but there was no way I was going to give him the satisfaction. Benny died 2 days later. I couldn't look at him. I didn't even want to think about it. It's amazing the things you'll do to survive. I think Benny would have understood. They say the mind bends and twists in order to deal with the horrors of life. I think my mind bent so much it snapped in two. When a platoon of GIs freed me 2 weeks later, they tried to take the helmet off. I killed 4 of them before they took me down. After that, they shipped me back to the States and put me in the asylum. But now I have a chance to get even with the man who pushed me over the edge and made Benny die.
Mr. Grimm woke up and continued his quest for revenge, now motivated by the fresh memories that awakened in his mind. Mr. Grimm wished that he had died that day and felt the pain of what he did to Benny. He imagined seeing the advisor again and wondered if he'd recognize him from the war. Mr. Grimm needed him to. He wanted him to feel terrified before he finished him. But he needed to make it back to Calypso first in order to gain his wish. After winning the tournament, a heavy-duty Midtown City police helicopter armed with missiles and powerful shielding appeared. The tournament had claimed too many lives over the years, and it was time for the law to put a stop to it. The best hope the police had was the massive chopper known as the Warhawk, but a man bent on revenge was a difficult foe to bring down.
I'd done it. The battle was over. I'd won the contest. I went to see Calypso. Turns out he was a man of his word. He told me it was time for a reunion. After all these years, the advisor looked exactly the same. He didn't know who I was, but I recognized him. I'd been seeing his face in my nightmares for 30 years. Calypso had one more special prize for me. Dinner for one. 30 years is a long time to be locked away. You get kinda tired of asylum food. But after all this time, something new was on the menu. As much as I hated to admit it, over the years I developed a special craving for human flesh.
Mr. Grimm's victory in Twisted Metal created a monster that would have been explored further in the cancelled sequel to Black, the cancelled Twisted Metal Harbor City. After the tournament, Mr. Grimm decided to spend his nights racing through the streets in search of his next serving of human flesh. And he continues to further lose his mind, having conversations with Benny's skull. Conversations that convinced him that he's the actual Grim Reaper, destined to take the lives of any that come across him.
One of his overpriced toys.
Yeah!
Hey, huh? What's that?
Maybe he ran out of gas.
Well, maybe I got myself a new chopper. I'll be back. Yo, bro, what's the problem? Why don't you take off that mask and talk to me?
What the? Mike! 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 Oh, man. Hold on, man. Dude, I'm coming.
Daddy, you love me?
Well, of course I love you, honey.
Well, if you love me, you take me to Happy Toyland.
That's right. If you love your children, you'll take them to Happy Toyland.
You still love me, Daddy. You do.
Let's get right back.
My name is Daniel Grimm, and I'm an asshole. I fried people, killed people. Hell, some of the ones I killed, I know they didn't have it coming.
The final appearance as of now of Mr. Grimm, 2012's PS3 exclusive, Twisted Metal. Another standalone title with some small recurring story beats. This Mr. Grimm was now a man named Daniel Grimm, wearing voodoo-like face paint, and his backstory is a grim tale of vehicular mayhem that has some very obvious callbacks to Marvel's Ghost Rider. Daniel spent his life robbing people, killing people, and many of those were totally innocent. As he rode down the highway, he reflected on why he turned out the way he did. He used to have a great life, loving father. His father was a popular stunt cyclist and star of Mr. Grimm's death-defying stunt show. Daniel loved his father greatly, and his favorite moments were just the simple ones. Riding with him to new towns, seeing new sights, performing in different locations. But one horrifying day, the stunt went wrong.
That night I learned the truth. The world don't give a crap about you, so I figured I might as well return the favor. Doesn't take a genius to figure how it all worked out. Come on, motherfucker! Turns out, I'm the bad guy.
From that day forward, Daniel's life was never the same. He grew up angry at the world for taking the only person he loved. He struck back in a rage at everything and everyone around him. He joined a violent motorcycle gang called the Skulls and dispensed violence without discretion. But what if he could change his life before he went down that dark path? What if he could attain redemption by going back in time and saving his father from the stunt that killed him? If Calypso could truly make any wish come true, nothing would stop Daniel Grimm from winning Twisted Metal. He entered the contest with his Skulls gang as his allies, and rode his Reaper motorcycle into battle, his trusty chainsaw that he could throw mercilessly, slaying his enemies at his side. His final opponent is a giant mech modeled after and piloted by fellow contestant Dollface. After Dollface's Iron Maiden is destroyed, Daniel Grimm gets his wish. He's transported back in time to just before his father's death.
All the crap I've done. Oh, you think you're tough? Come on, motherfucker! Bring it! Bring it! All the people I've hurt. Please, God. You want to meet God? No, please don't. All because of that one night. But now I can change all that.
Hell of an entrance. I'm sure your dad would be proud.
Send me back to save my father, Calypso.
Mr. Grimm, your wish is
granted. My dad kept a handgun under his seat. He never knew I knew about it. Never thought I'd go snooping around. Send me back, Calypso. I gotta admit, I'd have shot that motherfucker too. Bring it!
And that is the history of Twisted Metal 1 and Mr. Grimm. Let me know what you think of this new video series and what other characters you want me to cover, and which one of Mr. Grimm's endings is your favorite and your least favorite. Start the conversation below. I'll catch you guys next time.
I am Calypso, and I thank you for playing Twisted Metal.